Sad fact of life, most of the people you are introduced to in a horror movie won't make it to the credits. Fortunately, there remains a curtain call of badass women who sadly don't make it to the end of their respective film due to a delightful combination of slashers, monsters, or demonic puppets. Many formidable ladies have gone down in the annals of horror history as gone too soon. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with the 10 best non-final girls in horror movies. Number 10. Allison Kerry in Saw 1, 2 and 3. Allison Kerry is an exemplary police officer, one of the very first assigned to work the Jigsaw case in the Saw franchise. Yes, she's also a workaholic, but that comes with the territory when tracking down serial killers with a penchant for nightmarishly twisted games. Kerry demonstrates her ability as an investigator throughout her run on the franchise, spotting clues where others fail to. She is the first person to realise that Jigsaw watches his games when she finds his peephole. She is also seen to be extremely loyal. She is haunted by the disappearance of former Flame and partner Eric Matthews to the point where she hallucinates him. In a horrifically twisted turn, Kerry is captured and locked into one of the iconic traps. Her career is thrown in her face as the reason for her predicament, as she is informed that she prefers the company of dead bodies to live ones. Her task is to retrieve a key from a beaker full of acid, which she manages to do despite the searing pain. In utterly depressing fashion, Kerry discovers the useless key was a red herring. She has just enough time to look up and see Amanda, the architect of her situation, before her ribcage is torn apart by the trap. An empowered detective who hung tough for a long time in a brutal cinematic universe, Kerry deserved better than a barbaric trap she had no hope of escaping. Number 9. Jenna Montgomery in Friday the 13th. An unexpected bright patch of the clunky 2009 remake of Friday the 13th was Danielle Panabaker's Jenna Montgomery. Initially shaping up to be the final girl before her demise towards the climax of the movie, Jenna is kind and sweet from the onset of the film. She becomes even more sympathetic to the audience when viewed in contrast to her privileged brat of a boyfriend, the aptly named Trent. In amongst the group of obnoxious friends so cringeworthy that viewers start rooting for Jason, Jenna is quite literally the only bright spot. This makes it all the more heartbreakingly unfair when she realizes her boyfriend is sleeping with her best friend in the midst of the usual Friday the 13th chaos. She and Clay are the first to spot Jason hauling a corpse out of sight. Despite her likable nature and shaping up to operate as the main love interest of lead protagonist Clay, Jenna just can't catch a break. She is duly dispatched by Jason and his trusty machete in a desperate attempt to free Clay's sister Whitney from Jason's lair towards the finale. The demise of Clay's romantic interest adds an extra layer of impact to the death of a fan favourite character. Probably a good thing that they decided to scrap her original death where Jason bludgeons her with a fire extinguisher after she and Clay discuss romantic plans. The culmination of a run of appalling luck for poor Jenna, nice girls just don't do well in horror films. Number 8. Kia Waterson in Freddy vs. Jason. You're not even scary. Anybody brave enough to say those words to Freddy Krueger's face, let alone accuse him of using his knives to compensate for something, is a horror character worthy of mention. Kia Waterson, played by none other than Destiny's Child's Kelly Rowland from 2003's slasher bonanza Freddy vs. Jason, is no exception. Kia starts the film off with several unlikable characteristics, such as needlessly bullying a nerdy kid who tries to hit on Laurie, but this speaks volumes to how much of a lasting impression she ultimately leaves. A constant source of support to protagonist Laurie throughout the film, Kia's most memorable moments ultimately come during her final ones. In an attempt to transport Jason Voorhees' sleeping body to a site where they may unleash him on Krueger, things go horribly wrong with the van crashing off the road. Kia fearlessly distracts Krueger from Laurie and Will by mercilessly mocking the scarred psychopath, allowing the pair to escape unscathed. Krueger is understandably upset by Kia's attacks and is irritated to a point rarely exhibited by the focal point of the Nightmare on Elm Street series. Sadly for Kia, Freddy indicates with a bladed finger that Jason is standing right behind her as she unleashes her verbal beatdown. Kia is slashed by Jason with such force that she flies into a tree several meters away. It is clearly advisable not to make any jokes about Mr. Krueger's masculinity or lack thereof. Number 7. Liz Hunter in Wolf Creek. Including Wolf Creek's Liz Hunter on this list is almost unbearable. Such is the harrowing nature of the fate that befalls such an empowered character. Liz and her friend Kirsty are innocent 20-something-year-olds backpacking across Australia, only to find themselves abducted by Mick Taylor, a serial killer whose levels of twisted depravity make Michael Myers resemble Elmo. Despite being shaken to her core by her horrendous ordeal, Liz manages to maintain unfathomable levels of composure. She masterminds the pair's initial escape by shooting the vile killer in the neck after distracting him by setting a car on fire. In the rush to escape, their escape car is destroyed, but Liz heroically volunteers to return for a replacement vehicle. In almost trademark heroic fashion, she tells Kirsty to escape without her if she doesn't return in 5 minutes. At this point, viewers understandably presumed that Liz, the only source of resistance not weeping with trauma, was the heroine of the entire film. However, she is revealed to be no more than a horrifying example of a non-final girl. She is murdered by Taylor attempting to steal a car in terrifyingly graphic fashion, her spine finally severed with a Bowie knife. While fans will remember her more for her utterly traumatic death sequence, Liz's portrayal as an everyday person whose heroic fight back against a genuinely disturbing villain in the face of desperate odds paint her as one of the more memorable non-final girls to date. Number 6. Clear Rivers in Final Destination 1 and 2. Featuring a vengeful iteration of Death who does not take being cheated lightly, the Final Destination series often comes off as more of a dark comedy than a serious horror franchise, after featuring some of the more hilariously morbid ways to snuff it ever seen on screen. The series does, however, play home to Clear Rivers, one of the more resourceful non-final girls seen in horror films to date. It speaks volumes to the richness of Clear's character that producers chose to bring her back for Final Destination 2 over Alex Browning, the central protagonist of the original. A survivor of the infamous Flight 180 explosion from Final Destination, Clear demonstrated rarely seen powers of sensibility within the horror genre in the sequel, voluntarily committing herself to a psychiatric ward for protection. Despite being distraught over Alex's death, taking place off-screen since the events of the first film, Clear fights through her fear and is instrumental in figuring out that only new life can cheat death. Tragically for her, however, Death had not forgotten her escape from the deadly inferno of Flight 180. Rushing to find Eugene at the hospital, Clear accidentally knocks a plug in his room out, causing a spark. The room has steadily been filled with oxygen, which ignites and instantly incinerates both Clear and Eugene in apocalyptic fashion. A fiery end for one of the smarter non-final girls, sadly not quite smart enough to cheat death. Number 5. Taryn White in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. The very definition of a dream warrior, Taryn White goes down as one of Freddy Krueger's more formidable female victims. She is one of the Elm Street kids, the surviving children of the parents who burned the vile serial child murderer's physical form alive many years ago. Taryn is also a former drug addict trying to keep herself clean. Her steely resolve is demonstrated by scornfully dismissing a guard who attempts to bribe her into sex with the promise of drugs. Taryn's dream power in this installment of A Nightmare on Elm Street certainly didn't hurt her credentials either. Making her beautiful and bad, Taryn is transformed by her power into a switchblade-wielding biker badass, one capable of going toe-to-toe with Krueger himself. Unfortunately, Taryn's enviable powers and powerful backstory aren't enough to grab herself a spot in the film's finale. She finds herself face to face with Krueger and is killed despite a valiant effort. Even her superhero-esque alter ego crumbles as Freddy exploits her greatest fear by swapping the blades on his gloves for syringes. A death soaked in the cruelest of irony for the recovering addict, and incidentally one of the legendary slasher's most immortal kills. Number 4. Kate Schmidt in Fear Street 1994. Kate Schmidt was one of the more pleasant surprises of the first installment of Fear Street. Wonderfully played by Julia Raywald, Kate is a cheerleader who makes money selling drugs on the side, hoping that the carefully saved money will buy her a life away from Shadyside. Despite her propensity for dealing narcotics, Kate is a fiercely loyal friend who never falters, even in the face of unexplained wave of evil sweeping the area. Her most immortal moment comes when defending Dina and Sam from Skull Mask. Kate uses a lighter and a can of hairspray spray to create an improvised flamethrower to keep him at bay, in a scene that would put Stranger Things' Murray Bauman to shame. It only seems just that such an immortal supporting character would meet an immortal end, and Kate does exactly that in Fear Street 1994's most shocking sequence. Kate is stabbed while struggling with one of the Shadyside killers before he proceeds to feed her head through a cake slicer. Seeing one of the most likable characters in the new series bite the dust in such appalling fashion left viewers absolutely aghast. Kate was developing into such a fan favourite that the jaw-dropping brutality involved in her death had much more of an emotional impact on viewers than your run-of-the-mill gore fest. As such, while she didn't make it to the end of Fear Street, Kate will live on as one of the more popular non-final girls to make their bow. Number 3. Helen Shivers in I Know What You Did Last Summer. Superbly played by Sarah Michelle Gellar, I Know What You Did Last Summer's Helen Shivers is contemporarily regarded as one of the greatest non-final girls in history. Simply put, a key element behind the success of Helen's lasting impression is that she's just a cool character, effortlessly slotting in amongst the popular kids while managing to avoid the more obnoxious traits associated with such girls. Gellar's Helen was positively received by fans, many of whom preferred her to Jennifer Love Hewitt's lead protagonist Julie James. This may be due in some part to the fact that Jennifer Love Hewitt spends the majority of the film bogged down by stereotypical horror girl typecasting, too busy screaming her head off to contribute anything useful. While she admittedly does also do a lot of screaming, Shivers shows she is willing to fight to survive. Look no further than her bucking the stereotypical image of a pageant queen by hurling herself from a third-story window to escape the film's hook-wielding killer, or kicking out the window of a police car. Even after seeing her sister's brutally murdered body and falling several stories, Helen refuses to give up her bid for freedom. This makes it all the more heartbreaking when the killer catches up with her and she is bludgeoned to death. Safety within eyeshot, screams drowned out by the passing parade. Helen sadly highlights a common trait of many great non-final girls, often resulting in their status as such, lacking the ability to make a quick getaway. Number 2. Juno Kaplan in The Descent 1 and 2. While The Descent's Beth or Sam are other examples of top-tier non-final girls, Natalie Mendoza's Juno takes the accolade of Best Non-Final Girl from 2005's terrifying subterranean horror. The Descent tells the tale of a caving adventure gone appallingly wrong. A caving trip meant to renew the bonds of friendship between the group swiftly turns Hadean as they are trapped in a cave system revealed to be brimming with crawlers, nightmarish humanoid creatures who hunt them through the terrifying darkness. Strangely, Juno is incredibly unlikable for several reasons. She gets the group trapped in the first place by revealing they are in a system that only she knew about, and she is also revealed to later have had an affair with main protagonist Sarah's husband before his death. Last but not least, she accidentally kills Beth, mistaking her for a crawler. Contrastingly, however, Juno unwaveringly refuses to leave Sarah behind, even in the face of the hellish crawlers. Ultimately, what lands Juno on this list is just how much of a straight-up badass she is. Already an expert climber and caver, she manages to survive underground with the monstrous creatures, even after Sarah cripples her with a pickaxe and leaves her for dead. By the time the sequel rolled around, her time underground had left her a crawler-killing expert. It takes the largest lead crawler to finally bring an end to one of the more complex supporting characters in horror history. Number 1. Tatum Riley in Scream. The quintessential non-final girl features in 1996's Scream, Tatum Riley. Played by Rose McGowan, Tatum is a significant character within Scream canon, despite only appearing in the very first installment. A popular high schooler, she is the younger sister of Scream mainstay Sheriff Dewey Riley, and best friend to series protagonist Neve Campbell's Sidney Prescott. Tatum makes quite an impression with her sharp tongue and quick wit, no matter what scene she's in. She also holds the distinction of being the first character to name Ghostface, mocking the killer when she believes it is Randy in disguise. McGowan's character has the signature non-girl badass streak within her as well. Even when the killer slices her arm blocking her escape, Tatum fights back like a cornered wildcat. After clotheslining Ghostface with the fridge door, she then proceeds to pelt him with beer bottles. Stunning the killer after one bottle catches him square in the face, Tatum vaults over him in almost Mission Impossible-esque fashion. Tatum's only undoing is her choice of escape routes. Attempting to escape through a cat flap in the garage door, she gets stuck. From there, Ghostface proceeds to operate the garage door, which lifts a struggling Tatum and crushes her spine in the mechanism. It is never revealed whether it was Billy or her own boyfriend Stu wearing the mask when she died, but the iconic manner of her death, coupled with the popularity of her character, gives Tatum Riley arguably the strongest non-final girl legacy out there. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.